Are you ready to master the waves of medical device product development? Well, wax up your surfboard because you are listening to Inspired by Imua. And here is your medical device product development expert, that Hawaiian-hearted hostess who will help you hang 10, Meghan Alonso.
And aloha! You're listening to Inspired by Imua, where we help you master the waves of medical product development. Each week, we interview guests that educate, guide, and inspire to give you and your product the skills you need to hang 10. If this is your first time listening, Imua is spelled I-M-U-A, and it's a Hawaiian word. It means to advance forward with passion despite rough waves. There are plenty of those in medical product development, so keep listening because we've got you covered. So I wanted to take today just to review the last week. I was pretty busy. I was up in San Francisco for all the JP Morgan healthcare festivities, and we got a surprise guest at JP Morgan. His name is Joe Biden, so it was a little crazy. I was actually in the hotel when he arrived, and man, we were just shoulder to shoulder. Security was really tight. I couldn't even check in. I went up to the hotel and there was immediate security wanting to see my badge for the conference or a hotel room key. So I said, hey, I'm checking in. And I actually had someone that had to escort me to the front desk. So that was a little nuts. And like I had covered before, if you listen to last week's podcast, episode 42, there's 5 different conferences that happen during the original JP Morgan Healthcare Conference. So much hype has built around it. So there's 5 different conferences, tons of cocktail parties. I mean, literally, like you can probably go to 10 cocktail parties each night. There's breakfasts and just people literally all over within a few mile radius of Union Square. And they're there for this healthcare week, just all these conferences with early stage healthcare investing. So that's where I want to focus in on today. I spent most of last Tuesday at the RESI conference, which is the Redefining Early Stage Investment. And I know most of you guys out there listening are in early stage of medical product development. So it's just perfect. So I am bringing some audio to you. You know, I'm out there at all these conferences and networking events. And my goal here is to really bring that to you. You know, if you're not able to go to all of these, then you at least get the highlights through me. So we're going to cover a few different people and their products that were showcasing what they had at the RESI conference and just attendees too. And you'll also get a little snippet from one of my favorite forums. So we're going to hear from a few different people, the people on this forum, because you won't hear them introduce themselves. So this was the Medical Device Investor Forum. So we have Sam Ifergan from IGAN Partners. We have Brent Ahrens from Canon Partners. We have Anna Prosser from Fountain Healthcare Partners, Gary Brunk from Lumina Capital, and Lewis Cannon from BioStar Ventures. So you'll be able to hear their insight with raising capital. And a lot of what they talk about is a little later stage. They want to see products that are de-risked and that have gotten past the proof of concept stage. So keep that in mind when you're listening to them. And it's really interesting. You know, in my virtual accelerator program that I have, Invention Idea to Profitable Product, I really cover this, that you really need to do your homework on your investors. So whether it's someone that they invest early and they want to wait, 5-10 years before they get a return on their investment. Or there's investors out there that they invest a little later stage and then they want to invest on their investment in like 6 months to 2 years. So it just depends. You really want a good match when you're looking for investors. So listen to them. They definitely give some tips for this and some really good insight. Then also the people that I'm interviewing that either were presenting there from a startup standpoint or they were just attending, they have some really valuable guidance for you too, because they've been on that journey before, or they're currently in it of being a startup and just facing the challenges and the rough waves associated with that. So get some valuable takeaways from that. And if you weren't in San Francisco this past week, like I said, I'm bringing the conference to you, but you always have an opportunity to come to these conferences. And speaking of that, next Monday, January 23rd, I'll be speaking at the MEDTECH Monday conference. That's in Irvine, California. You can save $100 off the conference with promo code AMUA100, but you've got to do that by the end of Tuesday, January 17th. So you got to do that soon. I'll have a link in the show notes for that, just so you can do that. And yeah, hope to see you there. If you don't catch the promo code early enough, then that's okay. Just you can pay full price and I'll still see you there. And I'll for sure be reporting on that too. So enjoy the audio I have for you, and I'll check in with you once this is over. So say your name and your company.
Jerry Mesger with Harbor MEDTECH in Orange County, California.
So you're here at the RESI conference. Oh, and you're an Ohio State fan. So tell me, what attracted you to exhibiting here and showing off your technology at RESI?
Well, this is a good conference and a good location at a good time. The JP Morgan conference attracts people from around the world focused on healthcare. So it's an opportunity for us to meet colleagues, potential investors, potential strategic partners.
So you've been on your journey as a startup company a while. If there's one piece of advice that you could give to someone just starting out or really early stage, what would it be?
It's perseverance. I mean, it's not an easy thing to do, but you just keep at it. Don't take no for an answer. If you really believe in the product, if you really believe in the technology and the opportunity, you just keep pushing forward. And if it's the right thing, and you keep sticking your head above the weeds to find out if the world's changed around you, and your idea is no longer the right thing, you got to know that.
Yeah.
So you keep looking around to make sure you're headed the right path to the right target, and you'll eventually get there.
So tell us more about Harbor MEDTECH.
Harbor MEDTECH is a company I started about 5 years ago. It's actually my 8th medical device company in my career. The other ones were startups or turnarounds for venture capitalists. This is a company that I saw an opportunity in the regenerative medicine space for a product and a solution that could yield faster healing of wounds, a better patient experience at a far lower cost. All of these things are precisely aligned with where today's healthcare system is going in the United States and around the world.
Yeah. And as far as investment, what's been successful for you in the past with raising money?
Well, it's just what's successful is you've got to keep your eyes on the checkbook, on your expenses. The worst thing a company can do is start spending money ahead of where they are. And so conserve your cash, conserve your funding, spend it wisely, but you never stop raising money.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Phil Croxford, President and CEO of Gamma Medica.
So you're presenting here at the RESI conference. What made you choose RESI?
We've presented before, about 18 months ago in Boston, and we find that there's a good cross-section of investors that will appeal to our Series B raise that we're looking at right now.
Good. So you're already in Series B. Tell us a little bit about your technology.
We have we believe the best early detection device for breast cancer with women who have dense breast tissue. 50% of women have dense breast tissue, and also for women who are genetically predisposed to cancer, BRCA1 and BRCA2 positive genes.
Yeah.
And we find more cancers than any other modality available today. The traditional modalities used are using what we call anatomical imaging, and the mammary gland is extremely difficult to image using anatomical imaging. We use what we call a molecular functional image. So if there's cancer present, we are able to detect the activity of the cancer cell, and it's completely agnostic to any form of anatomy or density that normally exists in dense sperm. So we find approximately 4 times more cancers in standard mammography. And density is actually a specific risk factor. You're about 2 to 3 times more likely to develop cancer if you have dense breast tissue. That's in addition to any other factors such as social lifestyle, genetics, familial history, and so on and so forth.
So what's been the hardest thing about fundraising?
It's a distraction. We are commercial, and so I try and spread my time between trying to raise money to support the commercialization efforts, at the same time trying to obviously build a business both in the United States and internationally, particularly in Europe. So time constraints, that's one. And the other is obviously competition. There's a lot of great new technologies out there, and most investors are used to investing in angel status, whereas we as a B round is unusual because we are 100% commercial. So, we have got approval, we have reimbursement, and we just need capital to support the efforts.
So you're outside of the traditional investment pathway, I guess.
Yeah, I was just on a panel just now, an investor panel for China, and 5 panel members, 4 of them are pre-stage, early stage. I'm commercial, and my dollars will go a long way because, and also it's low risk.
Yeah. So this Chinese investment panel, what was a big takeaway from that?
I think first of all, for the Chinese women, Asian women have a 65% density ratio compared to white women who have normally between about 40 to 45%. So there's a much, much higher risk. And then the market in China is evolving from a healthcare point of view, and they have about 2 times the death rate for breast cancer than anywhere else in the world. So I think that was quite startling, the statistics. The high risk, they've got a lot of deaths associated with cancer, and their current technology that they use today is inferior. They use a lot of ultrasound, and they're using X-rays. And it's just not working. It will not work effectively in those types of women.
Yeah. Huh. Any last parting guidance here?
I joined a company a couple of years ago because previously I spent some time actually in the same field, actually the other end of the spectrum, really in reconstructive surgery, reconstructing surgery for women who've undergone mastectomies. So unlike a lot of people in the medical device industry, I've actually seen it from a clinical point of view. And there's also a passion in my mind that this technology needs to succeed because we find 4 times more cancers than any other modality. So women need to have this.
Yeah.
And the second thing, I'm a pharmacist by training, and I've worked in the healthcare field on the provider side. And I just feel very strongly that be part of something that makes a difference. And I'm hoping that this will succeed. So it's going to be a new modality that is going to be established and really makes a difference in women's lives. 40,000 women each year in the United States die unnecessarily, and everybody's got some kind of story or closely related that either have been through a lot of discomfort or stress or know somebody who have succumbed to cancer as a result of this. So, to me, this is very passionate. And the final thing really is that there's been huge advances in treatment, personalized treatment. Once you know the cancer, you can assess the genetics of the disease and then treat using personalized chemotherapy. But on the diagnostic side, it's like a 2x2. It's so crude. It's ridiculous. We are personalizing diagnostics, which is the first time that anybody's done it. So we pick women who are high risk, we give them a test, and then the reliability is enormous. So,
yeah, you definitely have to be passionate about what you do just to get up every morning and keep grinding, keep trying to raise money and continue the success of your company.
Well, a personal note, last week, up and down, you're always ups and downs in a venture capital, right? So I'm preparing for this busy week, and I was at a low, thinking, okay, do I have the energy, do they have the tenacity and the persistence? And then I heard from my personal assistant, that was my old company, who's not only a colleague but a very close personal friend, and she's got a reoccurrence of a stage 2 cancer. And she got diagnosed at stage 2, which was late, and so the incidence of reoccurrence is very high. And so that's what got me up.
Yeah, and, it's fuel to the fire. All right,
that's
I
right.
got to keep fighting this.
It is. It's not a immaterial contributor, if you will, to healthcare. This is a significant contributor, and women need a better course of diagnosis. To be perfectly honest, they deserve it.
Yeah.
And what we have today is grossly inadequate. Right.
Okay. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
To Brett's point about regulatory reimbursement, how has that changed in your view of things? Wow. Okay. First, no question. Brett's correct. The FDA is a little bit of an unknown. Reimbursement also with CMS is an unknown. But let's look at the macro picture. So everyone in this room is getting older. I see a lot of young people in the back. But, if you look at the demographics of the population, 50% of us are going to die of heart and vascular disease. And 90% of us think we ought to be able to run, play tennis, and do all the things that we want to do when we're 50, 60, 70 years old, okay? That demographic is going to push cardiovascular and orthopedics to new heights. If you take a look at the average device that Boston Scientific has, Medtronic has, Abbott, J&J, it's a 3-year time frame. That's all you have. So if every device iteration has to change every 3 years, the demographics of the population are shifting. Think about the marketplace. It's going to boom. So the macroeconomics are fantastic. I don't want to go into politics, especially if I don't mention Trump to my wife. But anyways, if we were to talk about the regulatory environment that we may be looking at in the future, my hunch is there's going to be some down-regulation. Really hard to know what's going to happen with the Affordable Care Act. Really tough to know what's going to happen with MACRA, et cetera. But I can tell you right now that if you look at it from on the Acquisition Advisory Board of Medtronic, Boston Scientific, Abbott, they have an appetite like never before for new devices. If you take a look at cardiovascular structural heart disease, this whole thing about percutaneous valve replacement, that macro environment, is not only going to be the aortic valve, it's going to be the mitral valve, and it's the tricuspid valve, it's going to be the pulmonic valve, and it's not only the valve, it's all the good shticks that come with the valve. It's the large vessel access, it's the large vessel closure, it's the complications that occur from all those things. So the medical device industry is hotter than it's ever going to be. You just got to really need to be able to meander through some of the difficulties and the speed bumps that occur. And my advice to you is fail fast. Don't shoot backwards. You've got to know what's happening at Medtronic, J&J, Abbott, et cetera, because they've got in-house development. And if you're developing something that's probably 3 or 4 years behind and you're going to burn a lot of dollars and find out you're behind the 8 ball, you've got to really stay ahead of those things. So I hope I didn't talk too much. No, that's some of your questions.
You were optimistic, very optimistic, except about the aging population. Grant, on the other side, maybe you want to explain why you're shying away from medical device industry. It's numbers. And let me speak to, I think this is generally sort of industry data. I'll reference John Norris, who's a good friend, publishes and has for several years running data across biotech and medtech spaces. I think this came out last week. If you go to the STB website, you can find that information. And our data kind of overlays with that. And let me be more specific. If I look at our device investments, let me quantify the typical time to exit. So in a sort of a more general audience, I would say, what do you think is going to be a more rapid exit? Some tech company in our portfolio or biotech? And everybody says, of course, tech. It's not. Across our entire portfolio, which includes financials, fintech, and enterprise software, and medical devices, and biotech, and so on, our most rapid exits, and this is with big N as opposed to small n, is a little under 4 years from initial investment until it's an exit. Device companies, 8 years. So now, all else equal, if I just look at the IRR on that, assume I get the same money invested in the company and money back, the IRR is going to be dramatically different, one versus the other. Full stop. So that's one piece of the story. The other piece is I'm not getting the same money back. The typical biotech outcome that we think about is, okay, finger in the wind, $300 to $500 million takeout or IPO is actually fairly consistent, fairly steady. And so the companies end up playing for an outcome, market cap, enterprise value, whatever term you want to use somewhat synonymously, that's about 2x. So biotech is, the exit is twice as rapid, and the outcomes, the value created, is about twice as much. So look at that, you say, so then the ROI, the return on investment, if I invest $10 million and I'm taking out 30 in the device company,
I'm taking out twice that in a biotech company. That's the math. That's our reality. That's why we've migrated our practice over the years to being within the 40% of the fund that is healthcare. It's about 65 to 75% biopharma. And there's a whole mix of stuff. It's 505(b)(2) pathway, some brand new oncology platform, the drug device, digital health combos. There's a whole mix of stuff. But that's why we've migrated to looking at biotech as the mainstay. And then everything else has to be compared against that. Why do you think this device company, Brent, is going to be the one that can even kind of come close to that? And so that leads us necessarily to looking at later stage device companies. There is potentially more, at least the IRR quotient of that is going to be more in line with what we see in our biotech companies. Does that answer the question?
From our group's view in Toronto, we have somewhere in the middle. We like to say when everybody's zagging. That's kind of our philosophy at the high level. I think historically, you're completely right. I think the returns have been better on the farm side and the biotech side. I think what you're seeing now is for the first time, the medical device sector is starting to, clearly outperform for a limited select areas other biotech sectors and pharma sectors. And I was talking to an investment banking colleague who's well versed in the device universe, and he basically put it to me this way: there's 1,000 medical device companies that are missing that should have been funded over the last 5-6 years that haven't been funded. I mean, just statistically speaking. So there is going to be, we view there's going to be a lack of M&A targets and a lack of innovation on the medical device side. So that's our view. And Jerry, I wanted you two guys to focus on, forget the funding side for a second. What do you see as the trends? I mean, you're highly focused on cardiovascular because of demography, but what do you see as other trends emerging in the medical device sector that you guys are heavily focused on in sourcing and dealing with?
I suppose from our perspective, we're aware at the macro level, just to bring it through a little bit, about the consolidation that's happened. We invest with a view towards exit. And people don't understand that the second we put our money in, we're trying to get it back out again. You don't understand what venture is about. So it's getting harder and harder to align a venture fund with an expectation of who the exit partner would be. So it creates a good thing because you have to focus on excellence and larger markets that will be dynamically able to withstand an unknown future in terms of who you will be selling to. And that's about excellent data, great connectivity to key opinion leaders, and a fundamentally good product. So for me, areas like neurostimulation are areas we've looked at both in mainstay medical and also in a disruptive device we think for treating tinnitus. And if you look across a number of areas in pain, I think that's a new area that's probably going to again speak to some of what Brent is talking about. It's going to generate a lot of data. It's going to have performance indications that are useful, and it's non-pharmaceutical, and it doesn't avoid any of the pharma or displace any of the pharma strategies. So for some companies, that's useful where they run both medtech and pharma programs in parallel. In many of these cases, you're selling to surgeons, and they're quite a conservative group. If you're dealing with neurosurgeons, for example, they generally want 10-year data in humans. So when you go from the KOLs, who will generally put anything into anyone, if they're ethically allowed, between that and it being adopted by the regular golf-playing surgeon, it's actually quite a long time. People want to see the commercialization of those new technologies. So I would say that the picks and shovels behind gene and cell therapy are ones that I'm quite interested in because they're going to need innovation, neurostimulation, and then I still think this time, good devices in neurovascular, orthopedics, etc. will make money, but there's very little differentiation in the orthopedic space at the moment ahead of better scaffolds for the regenerative medicine.
Yeah, the lens we've kind of put on this, and we wrestle with all the challenges that Brent has laid out here in terms of capital intensity, return on investment relative to our biotech practice. The way we've tackled device investing to shift probably about 5 years ago around almost a changing definition of innovation. So, and frankly, just because it chased, that focused on cost as opposed to, frankly, efficacy improvements in some circumstances. So, I'm not sure, again, we would make the investment we did 12 or 13 years ago in a company like Mako Surgical, developing $1.5 million surgical robotic platforms for cash-strapped hospitals in the United States or elsewhere. But we would be actually quite interested in looking at robotic platforms that deliver comparable functionality, say as intuitive, but for $50,000 a unit instead of $1.5 million or $2 million. So, especially when we look to markets like China, quite frankly, where so much of the capital coming in recently to our medical device portfolio relates to follow-on financings has originated both from institutional Chinese venture firms and also the corporate players in mainland China. A lot of capital, terrific demographics, but again, a customer base that demands a fundamentally different definition of innovation. And again, it's around volume and cost, and not just 20 or 30% cheaper, but 100 times cheaper. And so that's been a lens really across sectors, whether it's cardiovascular, orthopedics, digital health, that we've tried to wrestle with some of these other really quite real challenges in device investment in the U.S.
Let me just ask a question out there. How many of you are entrepreneurs or CEOs or inventors? Oh. That's good to know. Let me also, I think that this panel is a good panel in the sense that it gives you a feeling for what money is looking for. Okay, so, for me, Brent mentioned, and he's absolutely right, IPO, Salesforce, Marketplace, for BioStar. Man, if we ever are talking about a Salesforce, we have screwed up because we don't ever want to get there. Our value inflection point is animal studies. Then we want to sell. If animal studies don't work, we want to do 10 in Europe and then get the hell out of there. If we're doing a US FDA pivotal study in IDE, we're like sitting there going, oh God, okay? A recent acquisition we had was Cardiovascular Ingenuity. We wrote the first check for $300,000 for that company. It was less than $30 million in. Actually, NEA came in at the end. You got a lot of money. We sold that for $240 million. We only had 8 patients in the study. So if you're coming to BioStar with a $50 million post-money valuation, wanting to build a sales force, then you need to go to Brent for that. You know what I mean? If you've got an idea on a napkin, you may not want to go to Brent because he's so big, he's not going to probably write a check for $100,000. To us, it means a lot. So keep in mind where the money is. If you're trying to open up a non-U.S. site, definitely go see Sam up in Canada, because the United States, it ain't easy right now. So keep in mind where the money is, and then try to focus your presentation on that money, to get them excited about where you're at.
There's I'm sure everybody's heard the overall term business model. We're going to get down every other second, it seems, particularly in tech companies. The business model that Louis is speaking to, and it's kind of baked into all this stuff, think about that as you're building your company. Is there value inflection after you do 10 pigs? Or is it first in man? And how does it then translate into your ownership, your dilution, all that kind of stuff? In some instances, you have to have a long-term vision, say, I think this is going to take longer. And I don't think he's here today. A gentleman named Dennis War, who's running a company in Minneapolis. He had a previous company called VelociMed. Dennis has really interesting companies that do tend to take more capital than more biotech-like. And Dennis said, if that's the case, I'm going to have effectively a biotech development strategy, meaning I've got the concept, I've developed the thing, I'm going to do a phase 1, essentially safety. I'll do animal studies point. Then I'm going to do a phase 2, and then I'll do a phase 3, which is my registration trial. So many device companies haven't approached the world that way. We've done some anecdotal stuff, a couple cases here and there. Dennis is rigorous and ruthless about it, from what I understand. I'm not an investor, but that's the orientation you have to have. One other example, this was dating myself a long time ago. One of my first investments was a company called Dexcom, continuous glucose monitoring, fantastic company down in San Diego. The original idea was a fully implantable continuous glucose monitor, and it turned out that was really tough to do because every time you'd have to iterate on that, a completely hermetically sealed thing, it's a surgical procedure, and on and on and on. To iterate from generation 1 to 2 to 3, and I'm purposely saying it slowly, it's a long cycle. If you can find something where that cycle is more rapid, we morph the company, CEO gets all the credit, Andy Rassel, and saying, let's have this thing that's transcutaneous. When that happened, from the idea to completion of the pivotal trial was 3 months. Stunning. but it speaks to the business model. Do you have a chance to fail early, as was said? And that former one, the former one was going to be a tough putt, much more of a drug story, whereas the latter one, if it's not working, great. In 3 months, you're back in the clinic. In 3 months, you're back in the clinic. So the business model aspects that you're going to seek funding for is huge.
What we see in the US side as well as all the other areas that we get opportunities from is how people use their non-digital funding. Now, most of us at this end of the table really want to see things when they've had that safety study, that first in man, or de-risk to a certain extent. And what I've seen in a number of cases, just as a point from where I am, is you've got the sort of academic type push from the lab, and it's the greatest. It's the cure for death. And then you've got the market pull, which is designing the studies with a view towards what will you actually be selling in the market at what price competitively. And I cannot tell you how early you should start to talk to people with that market pull rather than the technology push. And you need a panel around you who will challenge you as early as possible, and preferably talk to us ahead of looking for the actual money where you can at sessions like this, about what we'd like to see in that early study. And equally, I've certainly seen in different countries, and I'd say France and Ireland, various countries put quite big sort of bio-innovate, like the Stanford programs in place, but they don't necessarily teach financial efficiency. So a lot of what we'd be looking for is how did you spend that non-dilutive money, and will you spend and respect the money you get to actually deliver the value along the way. So from the second you start using anybody's money, you start to demonstrate your ability to grow value, and don't underestimate or misuse that money earlier, because it does become part of our diligence. And great people with a bad technology is a much better investment than a great technology with bad people. So we do invest in team. So please make sure that you display your team and show honestly what the synergies are between you, particularly when you approach groups like ours.
Okay, so say your name and the company that you work with.
Dave Jasnos with MedControl Technologies.
So how do you like the RESI conference so far?
I'm enjoying it. There's quite a variety of different types of investors. That makes it a good environment for aspiring entrepreneurs here.
What's the best thing you've learned today? Or most helpful?
Probably some of the nuances about how different stage investors view the companies that are pitching to them, and some nuggets that help you make you a better candidate for funding.
And then tell me a little bit about your product.
So we're developing an internet-connected secure medication dispensing device that's preventing prescription drug abuse, addiction, and diversion. So controlled medications are locked in the device, and then it's programmed to know the patient's prescription so that when they're ready for another dose, it'll remind them through a text message, ringing, flashing, or vibrating. And at that point, they have to scan their fingerprint so no one else can take their medication and they can't give it away or sell it. It'll dispense a single dose of medicine and then otherwise lock them out until they're ready for their next dose. And then on top of all that, it's internet connected, so all the events associated with the device are wirelessly communicated through the cellular network. And we have an information system in the back end that can predict abusive behavior and monitor basically how people are taking their medications.
Yeah. So what's been your biggest struggle so far, just with the company? It could be anything from technology to fundraising to just general struggles that an entrepreneur goes through.
Yeah, I think for us, it's been, so we're not quite purely a digital health solution. We're not, I guess, like a more traditional medical device that gets implanted or diagnoses people, and we're not quite a consumer product. So trying to find that fit of the product market fit and establishing the right strategic partners where we're, putting ourselves in a healthcare environment. So identifying those partners and then being funded by people who are used to funding our sort of company, which isn't very common because we're sort of in the middle of all these different types of businesses. So I think it's been identifying healthcare partners and then potential funders has been the biggest challenge.
So if you were to give any piece of guidance or advice to someone a few steps behind you, going through their journey of developing a product, what would it be?
I guess it's pretty cliche or overused, but it's really identifying what value does your product create, focusing on the problem, how you resolve it, and what value are you creating, and driving toward a way to monetize that solution and how are you going to make money, and then everything else that follows, product features, product development, and your strategic approach to gaining a foothold and then growing the business will sort of follow that.
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice. And I always tell people that value proposition and that early stage market research of just validating the idea and then making sure there's a market that wants it, that's the most important thing.
Right, yeah. The other thing is really focusing. So as an example for us, we had this solution that could really address medication adherence. That's such a broad topic, and really focusing on drug abuse for us, we sort of narrowed down all the way down to like adolescence, post-op, for example, like focusing on something that you can be very good at, and not just a sort of general product that's okay at a lot of things.
The riches are in the niches.
Right.
All right, well, thank you so much.
Thanks.
I'm Doug Turnquist. I'm with Thermimage Inc. out of Salt Lake City.
So we're here at the RESI conference. How have you liked the conference so far?
It's been good. A lot of foot traffic. So it's a one-day conference, and my understanding was there's over 1,000 people that have signed up. So it's the biggest ever for a RESI conference.
Yeah, that's great. What are you looking to accomplish this week while you're here in San Francisco?
Well, our goal is to find fundraising partners. So we're looking for a relatively small amount of money in the $1 million range, $1 million to $3 million. So we're not looking for the larger VCs in the $10 to $15 million range. So we're looking for a certain investor that's looking to invest a small amount of money to help us license our product.
Yeah, and then tell us a little bit about the technology.
So the technology is, it's a non-invasive way to measure deep tissue core temperatures. So we can measure the temperature in the brain as our first product. You can also measure temperatures in the kidneys, in the lungs, in the heart, really anywhere in the body. You can measure it non-invasively using radiometry. So as far as we're aware, there's no other company that can do that anywhere in the world.
Yeah. So what's been your biggest challenge as a startup? And it could be just a general business problem or raising money or building a team. What do you think?
Well, in our case, the biggest problem is really just the time it's taken to develop the technology and then now heading through regulatory. I experienced, this is my 7th startup, but it's the first in the life science space. And in the technology arena, you can move very quickly because you're not regulated by other outside forces. So in the life science space, it's just very difficult to develop everything that's required to actually get to market. It's much more difficult.
What would be a piece of advice that you'd give to someone a few steps behind you?
Bootstrap as long as you can until you can raise additional money. But bootstrap it, keep as much of the company as you can because it'll take you longer to succeed than you think it will. And if you've brought some patient money in, that's okay, but much of the money out there isn't patient, and you'll end up losing your company even if you have a great idea.
Okay, well, thank you.
Right.
So I hope you enjoyed a little snippet of that audio from the RESI conference. They actually have, they have one coming up. It's April 4th. I'm actually on the computer, so I'm jumping on the website. April 4th in Toronto, Canada, and it's associated with a group called Mars over there. It's a really cool group. It's in association with their Health Kick Innovation Challenge. So check that out. It's just resiconference.com. It's RESI conference.com. And I hope to see you at MEDTECH Monday. Like I mentioned before, you can save $100 off with promo code IMUA100 at checkout. It's IMUA100. And more details about that conference can be found at medtechmonday.com. So I hope to see you there, and I hope you have a great rest of the week. Until I talk to you next, Imua.
Mahalo for joining us. If you're new to riding the waves of medical device product development, or if you've been in development for a while already, Inspired by Imua is here to surf with you. Want to be a master of the waves? Text HANG10, that's HANGTEN, to 44222. We'll send you the most common wipeouts companies make in product development so you can avoid them and reach master wave status. Again, that's HANG10 to 44222. We publish a new episode every Tuesday, so catch us at inspiredbyimua.com. Imua,